Welcome to this episode of the Justice Team podcast on the Justice Team Network. Today we bring back our favorite Irishman, none other than Ronan Duggan.
The thing about that is he only knows one Irishman, right? So I'm his favorite just because he doesn't know another
Well, if
one.
I open it up to Irish people, you would not qualify.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Christ.
Well, and Ronan, who if you've watched some of the other episodes, he's probably our most entertaining guest / host. But today we're going to bring you something special. Is Ronan and I talk a lot about something that's passionate in his heart, and that is how much he thinks artificial intelligence is the ruin of mankind. So he challenged me to come on to this podcast and ask me a series of questions, and I will try to answer them as honestly as I can about artificial intelligence, etc.
Okay, well, before we get there, I'd like to do one thing, right? So first of all, have a good look at Bob Simon down the camera and look at his arms. For a dude who drinks whiskey and pretzels and all, look at the fucking size of that dude's arms.
Yeah, look at that.
I put a lot of effort into these little miserable little spindly things. And this dude I think he must have a program going on. I think he's a low volume practitioner.
No, I
high
actually
intensity training.
You know, it's funny you said that because I did actually a bicep burnout this morning on Tonal, which is 15 minutes of, I think it was something like 120 different movements of all biceps. Yeah, I rarely do that. I usually try to do a whole body thing, but I only had a limited amount of time because I got up at 5:30. It's a little late. I knew my kids would be up soon. So
see, that's the thing about that. Everyone think about that because what he typically has posted in the past is him in an electrode suit.
Yeah.
And that's just subterfuge. He's actually properly training in high intensity Mike Mentzer fashion. So I salute you, Bob. So we start off on a good note of solidarity.
I train just to maintain.
Fucking excellent. Look, here's the thing about AI. Let me just say this. I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon when it comes to new technology, to be honest. I just heard about Word and PDFs and all that. But my genuine concern about let me ask you this. You are a fan of the working man, correct? And working
100%.
Okay. My obvious concern is that some of this technology will render some very good and skilled attorneys unemployed. Like, what would be the basic response to that?
I don't think it'll, like, the attorneys that are... Here's the thing, is like if you had a tool, wouldn't you want to use it to make yourself a better attorney so you can spend more time in the living room than like doing menial tasks, right? That's how I truly think it can be used. I think of it like this, like there's products out there that automate medical records, demand letters, stuff that I had to do as an early associate that was the bane of my existence. It was so menial, and I would have been better suited to be in the courtroom faster if I was actually able to observe trials, which I was never able to do because I wasn't. But to answer your question, I do think, and I think it would be naive to say that some people would not lose their jobs or be replaced by the use of artificial intelligence.
I see.
I think that'd be naive to say it, but I think if you can wisely leverage it, you'd be much, much more valuable.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, like, I've given thought to this in terms of my own practice and what I've seen around me. And I've been doing this amazingly 20 years. Can you fucking believe it? Haven't learned a damn thing. I think a lot of what we do is not trial work. Obviously, we can agree on that, right?
Correct.
Even very busy trial. Like, tell me this: when you were at your absolute peak of trial work, and I know you tried one a few months back, when you were at your absolute peak, how many were you trying a year?
Most I did, I was doing 6 to 7 a year for about 3 to 4 years. It was a lot.
And I think we would all agree that's high volume terms of trial work. So a lot of us, and what percentage of us are doing a lot of trials? It's quite a low percentage.
Less than 1%.
Look, we can't be naive. There's certain technologies that come along that humanity grabs. I wonder, like, as we analyze our profession, beyond the presentation of evidence, beyond actually interacting with humans in a jury, a lot of what we do is essentially a cognition plus regurgitation of some ideas plus argument. And obviously the big concern that many of us younger lawyers who haven't built the kind of empire you've built, our concern is we're competing against something that can emulate what we do pretty effectively, like now or soon.
Yeah, the thing that it will not, I think, be able to emulate is that sales technique. It can have pitches, it can do things, but essentially what we're doing in front of a jury or other things is sales. And how can you teach AI to be charming? How can you teach? And I think the most beautiful thing about being human is human error. And I think jurors appreciate that. I've seen so many times where you have this pristine lawyer on the other side that's perfect, that doesn't use notes, and it doesn't go so well for them because it's too polished, right?
Right.
And I think but again, that's a trial lawyers. That's the 0.01%.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm getting at.
I think that folks that are kind of that mid-journey lawyer that don't know if this is the right profession for them, and they're half foot in, half foot out all the time, they're going to be in trouble
Yeah.
because what they're doing could be replicated. I think lawyers that are doing billable hours, and this is where, like, when I look over all of consumers, how consumers are helped, I think access to justice, a huge roadblock is billable hours being out of control. I think for the overhead of firms, the bloated overhead of firms is out of control. Things about, from deposition costs to expert costs, all those things can be greatly, greatly reduced by the use of artificial intelligence that passes off to the client. So that's why I look at it as a societal tool that way.
Yes.
And I know it's hard, but for billable hours, I think a smart lawyer can help a lot more people and do better by themselves by going flat fee retainer. Flat fee retainer, leverage artificial intelligence, lower the cost to consumer, still able to do more.
Yeah. Look, I think I was a defense lawyer, as you know, for like over 10 years before I went to work at your firm. Mm-hmm. My first thought when I saw some of this is going to kill a lot of defense firms because the way, as you know, they make their money is you have 3 or 4 partners who are the trial lawyers and they have an army of billers, etc. And a lot of what they bill for, like in terms of, I'll never forget this. My very first day as a defense attorney, the partner came in, Pat Stockalper, who inducted you into Boda.
I have a picture with him. Wow,
yeah,
I saw
you
that.
Fucking Pat, are you out there? You legend. Remember that trial we did with USC? Amazing. But the first thing he said was, go do a page line summary.
Yeah.
And I couldn't type worth the shit. So again, in that world now, that is completely illogical. You could have even basic ChatGPT do that. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it was, what I think about it in terms of how it conditioned my brain, it wasn't completely mindless, right? It was me seeing an American deposition, which I wasn't completely familiar with at that time, and it started to train my AI, right? So some of that, I think, some of the grunt work, it's a bit like, did you ever see that wonderful movie, The Karate Kid, Bob?
Of course I did.
Do you remember when Mr. Miyagi's having him paint fences and all that? Part of that is just
wash off, wax on, wax off. Yeah.
Part of that is instilling a discipline and an understanding, right? And then you're left with the skills. So some of the concerns I have about the kind of, it's like, for instance, geez, I'm going on a bloody rant.
No, but I see where you're going.
You see what I'm saying?
But it's almost like, and I do appreciate, because that's the mental gymnastics you have to go through in order to be a better lawyer, better advocate. That's why I think, like, I literally started the mailroom because I started my firm. So you're doing everything. You can understand those processes. But are you reconditioning those processes? Like, people now, rather than going to an instruction manual, go listen to a YouTube video to figure out how to fix or do something, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's going to change just how we query our information or our brain, but maybe it goes the other way where we're now 8 second, what do they say? 8 second, like, what do they call
the
that?
attention span kind of stuff. Yeah.
I waited 8 seconds for you to say that.
Yeah, fuck. It was my attention span caught up in about 4 seconds. No, but I think these are some of the concerns. I think it's like every generation behind the new generation claims that their system was better and engineered the new generation. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of the wasteful, busy work I did as a defense lawyer, for instance, working in Southern California, was kind of just purely just generating these billable hours. But it also trained me analytically in certain ways. And I know, for instance, like you did yourself and when Sevi and all, when you were building the beginnings of your firm, you did a lot of the grunt work. Mm-hmm. Would you accept that a lot of that brought value to you now in the present 2024, 100%. Bob Simon? 100%. Right? My only concern is, it's like everything else. It's like, do you remember? I actually remember, I don't know if they did this in the States, but we even had bloody abacuses and things, which I suppose is an early form of computing. We did a lot of basic stuff in school that I do think kind of hardwires your brain to a certain type of problem solving schematically.
Well, but it's the same thing like I was doing with my 2-year-old. We were doing math. She's doing these math things, starting multiplication, all these other things. And you sit there and think, it's like, gee, any calculator could do any of this.
Right.
But you have to condition your brain to understand.
I agree. Yeah. Yep. Maybe, again, it's like the Cooper, Coopers were the fellas used to, and women, I'm sure, that used to build casks for certain types of alcohol and drink, right?
Oh, God. I was hoping you were going to say that and not
there you go.
Dead people.
But now, obviously, aluminium drums came along and that was the end of the Coopers. I wonder...
What if I think Coopers could have evolved?
They could have been the ones who went and mined the aluminium in bloody Sierra Leone. But listen, I would just say this. I think maybe I suppose the hope is that it kind of develops a new era where lawyers can really think the big thoughts about thematic qualities of framing their cases.
Okay. Well,
right?
and that's where I think you should be able to focus more on strategy and higher level brain power things. And I do think that the way that lawyers think, the way that we're trained as lawyers, that we have a skill set that can do societal change things. And my hope is that by automating a lot of these things, you can get more into the public sector to help with the public sector. And I know you're a big public sector guy. We talk about all this stuff. I think the biggest thing we're gonna see in the next 5 years at an accelerated pace is the wage gap that's gonna happen. And I think AI is gonna have a partial responsibility for that, because people that are making minimum or close to minimum wage for entry level position, artificial intelligence they're gonna have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be, now do we increase their wages to do something higher, like higher tasks? But this is where the wage thing is going to be a huge issue. Like you talked about the 0.01% of trial lawyers being like people actually in trial, which you can't replicate. That's why I think skilled labor is probably going to be the most expensive thing in the near future.
Yeah, I don't know. You see, I think if you remember the history of automation and the early promise of automation, and in America, for instance, there was a lot of ads on TV, etc., saying that everyday tasks at home would be freed up by the automation of things like microwaves, etc., etc. The idea was, at the heart of the goal of automation was to free labor to have more leisure time.
That's what it should be.
Right. Now, we can see demonstratively in 2024 that humans, well, most of them don't have additional leisure time, despite the fact that a lot of development has happened. Here's what I think. It all depends on who wields the technology and how it functions. Obviously, the social view or the socialist view of any automation is it's good if the community get to control it to free themselves. But if it's being wielded by oh God, just relax. If you're watching this and you're freaking out because you're just freaking out, just relax. They're just words and ideas, and they're not going to harm you.
But this is like the core to every science fiction movie set, like hundreds of years in the future. But it is. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
One of the most famous episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation was a bunch of cryogenically frozen people from the 20th century are woken up by the Enterprise. And one of them goes into Picard, and he's the capitalist billionaire, and he said, by now my stock should be worth this and that. And Picard's like, we've just abandoned all that. These are just ideas. Hopefully you win and I lose, whatever way you're thinking. But what I just say is, the concern about certain automated functioning is that the control of it, even in this industry, will inure mainly to the benefit of the people who've already made their fortunes and made their empires. And the young lawyers that need to go through what you and I might have gone through when we started, they're going to lose that opportunity. And it's nice to think that they could quickly go, I'm just a trial lawyer and I'm going to go off to trial. But these are the concerns. There's different levels of our practice, right? There's people who come out of, like for instance, let me ask you this. Did you have a bunch of student loans when you finished law school?
I still do.
Jesus. Why don't you pay them off?
Because the interest rate is so low that that money I can make more on that than using the interest rates. That's how I have to think, just generally.
See this fuck. He makes money work for him, whereas I dig a field and put the dirt in a new field. Well, look, you know, there's stuff going on where there's people who leave law school and they have genuine concerns about how they're going to afford families, how they're going to pay medical bills, how they're going to be able to afford a house. And obviously Southern California is a hyper expensive place compared to other parts of the States. These are just some of the concerns. Can I be brutally honest with you?
I mean, sure. I mean, God.
Let me be brutally honest. I'm concerned that I would just be...
I would love to show everybody our DM conversations to see brutal honesty. Okay, good.
I'm going to be fucking... What if I'm cast out, Bob? What if I can't survive the AI cull?
See, here's the thing with you, Ronan Duggan, is you are a very, very creative person, and you've actually co-written a comic book called Morado. Yep, and see, my copy's actually up there. See, someone just moved it.
Oh, yeah,
so
someone fucking moved it, yeah.
So, but that's the thing, is maybe that you get to your passion that's maybe somewhere else. I mean, you're good at script writing, all those other things, but I don't think you would be cast away because you're a great trial lawyer, but would you go away with volition? Or is it something? But for young lawyers that are out there, I think they're in a unique position. If you're in law school, you can leverage a lot of artificial intelligence to start your own firm, to be able to start marketing campaigns, to be able to acquire cases that used to be, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that firms had to do. Now it's thousands of dollars a year.
But isn't okay? I accept that. That's logical enough. In other words, there's tools that you will have immediately as a solo. I get that, and I was a barrister, so I was a solo. But in the United States, I've only ever been an employed lawyer. So sometimes I have a different kind of mindset to these things. But some of there seems to be two crescendoing issues that might meet and cause some problems for working people. In terms of working people in this space, a lot of the cases we have, and I've thought about this a lot, and this is not a novel thinking. A lot of our cases are the interactions that end in injuries or deaths to humans with machinery, right? Vehicles, certain things in premises, etc. They seem to be dwindling, right? I think that my car now has a automatic stop thing and all this shit and all that. There'll be less cases out there, I think. I might be wrong about that, but it seems like a logical premise. And now you're also competing with this technology that will also eliminate some jobs for people who won't be trial lawyers. So is it just a thing where we just have to face the reality of our obsolescence?
I don't think it's reality obsolescence. It's just that things change, products are safer. You have to pivot. Like law finds a way. Like there were no automobiles at certain time. There were no car crashes at a certain time, but lawyers were still a very big thing. So it just depends. You have to evolve, look at trends and say, look, if I'm just doing car crash cases, maybe I need to look at data security cases, right? Because that's going to be a big thing. People using artificial intelligence the wrong way. There's going to be litigation on that. It's going to be who stole what patent, or who if somebody stole your essentially, if somebody creates artificial intelligence based off of your copyrighted material, that's a whole new area of law. Whole new area of law.
Yeah.
Law finds a way. Lawyers find a way. We're all very sneaky.
Someone told me recently, Abraham Lincoln said, if there's one lawyer in town, he's not doing so well. If there's two, they're rich, or whatever it is. But
I never heard that before.
It might have been Nigel. Hello, Nigel. Someone told me that recently. I thought it was excellent. But listen, let me ask you this. That idea of moving into the market, say, of copyright issues, they can't be the same volume at all as
now.
Right.
Now.
But, okay.
But imagine if a $1 billion company used your trademark materials to make billions of dollars.
Yeah, but how often is that going to happen?
I think it's going to happen because a lot of these companies are buying products of which they don't know what it's taught on. So it might be. And again, this is not our area of expertise by no means. But they're still going to need lawyers like us to try those cases for the art of persuasion. However, I do.
But that is obviously still aiming to the small percent.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, let me ask you another thing. Just moving away from the kind of the volume potentials. One of the issues I believe in strongly as a person with a human brain. You have a human brain too.
It's a peanut brain.
Yeah, human brains. One of the issue is that we do come up with novel concepts, right? We do a synthesis of existing information, meeting a modern problem or zeitgeist. And
what was that? A modern problem?
I read it in the back of a cereal box. Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist?
Yeah. I think it's like a system of ideas that prevail. Okay, that's probably not the definition. If you know the definition, you're like, that's not the definition. Well, anyway.
I know a poltergeist.
All right, let's go poltergeist. So a modern no. What I was going to say was, one of the issues is, remember when we were in law school and we studied stare decisis, which is the idea of the precedent of law being modified as it moved through different factual issues, right?
Yeah.
A shame would be if the law stagnates because these AI softwares are just telling judges and telling lawyers this is the way it is, right? Okay.
But every artificial intelligence still has bias because it depends on how it was taught.
Gotcha.
So that could be a problem if they're relying on the same set over and over again. Look, and judges that make decisions have bias, and then that becomes law.
No, but I was thinking maybe there'll be a day where we would say, let's say an MSJ, motion for summary judgment, where you seek to end a case if you're a defendant, etc. And they usually come down to one net issue. Mm-hmm. And not everyone in the court's quoting the precise best law on it. But now with AI, it might even become non-judicious for a judge not to use an AI system, right?
I know judges right now in 3 different states that are in the pilot program with a certain artificial intelligence that will fact check the briefs with real case law with hyperlinks to be able to say, are they accurate, are they not?
Yeah.
And then be able to get to like the pinpoint issue.
Yeah, right. So even the art of legal pleading is going to change because it's going to become an arms race on that issue.
For the better, though. I mean, you want to get to the right issue, right? How often are we see briefs that are totally off point and people don't know what the hell they're talking about?
I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, how many times have you read a brief that skillfully looked at, say, the 3 main cases and came up with a new argument from our human brains that persuaded a judge to look at something a certain way? It would be a very dull world indeed for us legal smiths and legal tradespeople if it just becomes we spat in Westlaw, kicked out these 3 cases, the judge picked this one. And I think that could be the inevitability of a kind of system like that. Now, again, all of this is assuming that AI won't be able to get creatively thinking. And my understanding is right now it can't.
It can't, but I've seen AI,
and then we're proper fucked if it can, right?
Well, it's not. I mean, because it's hard to you can't. It can get a little bit creative, but so imagine I've seen products where you can download all the same judges' opinions, all the same judges like tentative rulings,
right? I've seen something similar,
and it can actually tell you to write in the voice of the judge, right? Because talk about the ultimate. I mean, maybe the ultimate art of persuasion is you want to mimic how people talk and act.
Yeah.
I mean, God, can you imagine like using artificial intelligence to change a judge's mind using essentially their own voice? It's almost like the ultimate inception.
Yeah, but you and I both been in situations where we didn't change the judge's mind with the law or even their interpretation of the law. We changed it with an appeal to some personality issue.
And it's a creative argument that people usually didn't see to make it easy for them to understand. And don't get me wrong, I'm watching or listening. There's a lot of judges out there that have never tried a case that don't understand practically any area of law. So it's a lot of teaching.
I mean, it might actually be beneficial to smash some judges around. No disrespect to the bench, but there might be some judges that need that kind of education. Let me ask you this: I don't know anything about the pricings of these products. I'm concerned, as we were sitting talking a minute ago, about this becoming an arms race, where a person with more money will have better access to AI.
So AI is going down substantially in cost. So there's a lot of these subscription-based ones that have an unlimited use, and it's like $400 or $500 a month. It's going way down from where it used to be. Okay. But we have to do part 2 of this episode because and I like this. I like the mental gymnastics because we didn't prepare for this show at all. Ronan just wanted to ask questions and.
Yeah, and let me just say, myself and Bob, sometimes we clash of ideas. And a lot of it is I just don't understand some of these things, but I am concerned about the developments in the practice from the perspective of people who haven't developed large legal empires. Yeah. And that's, and it's something we should talk. I think the community should talk about it. And obviously, I think we all agree that we do want to protect our industry from those who want to kind of gut it like private equity, et cetera.
Correct.
We definitely want to keep it as a profession of professionals who have some basic level of training and that inures to the benefit of the consumer, right?
Yeah, that is correct. And I think artificial intelligence has a way to do better for access to justice and better for the consumer and better for the lawyers that are working with it. But as you pointed out, that if the power's in the wrong hands.
Yeah. I'm not an apostle just yet, but I'm thinking, and that's the beginning of a synthesis of a new idea. Let me just say, Mardi Gras. How many people are going to Mardi Gras, Bob?
Well, how many have went by the time?
Yeah, how many? What you got signed up now?
We're about 800 now.
800.
Yeah.
What? That's a lot more than, what is it, 70 or 80 or some fucking nonsense.
Yeah, somebody said 70 or 80.
Yeah, listen, there's plenty of room out there for all kinds of conferences and all kinds of vendors. You who are possessive of conferences, don't be afraid of competition.
Don't be afraid.
It's America.
Embrace it.
It's a big open market where you can all drink from a beautiful trough of money and capital. Isn't that right, Bob?
That's spoken like a true capitalist, my friend Ronan Duggan. And with that, thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Justice Team Podcast.
And here's Brandon with the weather.
And Brandon with the weather. Sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. Southern California, low humidity. How easy it is to be a weatherman in Southern California. Thank you for listening and watching. Ronan Duggan, always a pleasure.
Bang the head.